We now go on to the Fireside Chat, solving the data puzzle, what, when, how. The participants are Koushik Krishnan, requesting Koushik Krishnan, Director Process Transformation, Bungi, to please join us. Koushik is a specialist in digitization, shared service setups, designing business processes, and building high-performing teams. Welcome, Koushik. Yeah, we can have louder applauses, I think, for very able participants. Geeta Gadekar, Chief Executive Officer, India, Publicis Resources. Geeta Gadekar is a seasoned executive in the shared services and operations domain, currently serving as the CEO of Publicis Resources India. In this pivotal role, she leads a dynamic team focused on enhancing operational efficiencies and driving digital transformation initiatives across the organization. Welcome, Geeta. Vijay Samuel, Vice President and Head of Operations, Analect India. Welcome, Vijay. Vijay is a highly accomplished global operations executive with over 20 years of experience across diverse industries. And leading the Fireside Chat is Bharath M. Sundaram. Bharath Sundaram, Vice President of the Everest Group. So it's over to you, Bharath, to lead that chat.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. We have a great panel and we have a very interesting topic today. We're going to talk about data. Some people say data is oil. Sometimes it feels like it's a quicksand. It keeps pulling you, you get sucked into checking accuracy and, ownership and so on. But let's face it, right? Data is integral to everything. It's in our systems, it's in our dashboards, and if we are lucky, it's also in our insights, right? So today we want to really dive into, data as a topic, solving the puzzle. Specifically, let's ask questions, right? Can we really create a single source of truth? Or is that just a fancy way to say, hey, good luck with things? Can we actually save some money by better optimizing data? Or is it just going to be, or can we go over and beyond into even transformation, innovation, and so on? The most important question of all, are we really letting legacy and certain cultural inertia hold us hostage, especially in the world where we have shiny new tools, right? Great panel we have here, so we'll jump right into the discussion theme. Right, the first theme that we have is let's start with a single source of truth. Koushik, maybe we start with you, right? Most organizations claim to have achieved a single source of truth, yet many of them still struggle, especially with siloed data. Is this even a realistic concept? Should organizations even aim for this? Is this aspirational? What's your take?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me, and great panel. And very good question to tee off. I think we've got to redefine the question a little bit. So when we ask, is there a single source of truth? So like how out in the wide world, there is no one truth. There are sources of truth, and then there are truths, right? And I'll give you an example, what this means in the context of data. So when you ask an accountant, what's the definition of revenue? So the accountant has a definition of revenue, yeah? That's driven more from what does the statute say and what does the accounting standard say, and that's what he wants to report. Now you ask a salesperson, what does revenue mean? And he looks at it from a point of view of what is his commission tied to. And these two numbers are different. And this is where you have the eternal struggle, right? What is the right data? Of course, they are both right in their own perspective. So how do you solve this conundrum? So I think organizations should not invest too much time and effort in fighting this battle. Rather, what you want to do is to capture the entire business transaction, the entire flow of the business in your data warehouse, so that you are able to then cater to different users of the data for their inclusion and exclusions. Yeah? But what you want to do is to harness the whole organization towards one or two priorities to say, what is it that we want to drive? Forget the definition for the time being. What is it we want to drive? And then organize people around that definition of what you want the data to do. So that would be my perspective.
Geeta, data everywhere. How do you use it?
And just to heads up, I might rush off the stage, not because there's an emergency here, because I have to get onto a call. So please excuse me for that. And happy to be here again, part of SSF Forum after a very, very long time. And on data, coming back to that. Rightfully, like you mentioned, right, there could be different purposes of the data, but finally it has to be what is this data going to serve purpose for? You know, finally it has to serve purpose to make decisions. Either it is on the business side, either it is in terms of the governance of your operations. Finally, it has to mean something. And for me today, it's an introspection for GCCs and setups like that. Long time back, we all started saying we want more visibility, we want more work moving up the value chain. Now that we have this excess of data, what are we doing with it? I think that's the question that we all need to ask. Is it really serving the purpose to run operations effectively, to ensure the CEOs, CFOs, leadership is able to make a decision, and whether this is just limited to a level where it's mid-management or leadership who understands what this data can serve purpose for? Is it really going down deep in our operations where our associates, senior associates, whichever area they are in, really are able to put it back to the overall business requirement and the final business outcome? I think that is where I feel today there is a bit of a gap and a challenge and a struggle as well. And I have heard a lot of my colleagues and peers in the previous panels talking about value creation. And definitely data can help you create that value creation if you're utilizing it appropriately. A classic example for us in our organization, number of reports, hundreds of reports available. But if you ask somebody, what is this report going to drive? No answer. Okay, if my CFO asks for a report, we have to create that report. Why? Why haven't we thought of this before? It's not available from our Power BI or system, which is supposed to make it easy, self-service as well. So that's going to be a larger question for me in terms of the excess of data available with us today. And are we really using it for the right purpose to create value, not just for our own setups, but also for the businesses that we are part of, so that, you know, that value creation can be sustained?
So the provocation for you is, should GCC start charging for reports?
Yes, we should. Of course, if we win that battle though. Right now it is on services delivered, but reports could be a very interesting one as well, because there's a lot of effort that goes in. And I was just telling Bharath when we were talking outside, my IT teams do come back to me and say, Geeta, you're asking me so many reports to create. What is the ROI on this, right? That's a question that everybody's asking on reports, especially whenever you want to even automate it. So that could be a way forward, definitely, in terms of reports, yes.
Vijay.
Good evening all. Thanks Geeta and Koushik, very valid points, and of course Bharath, you've spoken about this, and thank you for putting this question, which I think is the most important question of this point. I think we all start with saying it's definitely realistic. We eventually realize it becomes aspirational. The reason being that let's look at our current example that we're doing. We're looking at the complete demand deliver cycle, the code to cash. We start with looking at each of the teams where we have the data available. And data is available across the board. But the moment we start integrating it, then we start seeing silos, and we start looking at options or situations where the data is not matching, especially from the point of how the data is captured to the point where the data is delivered. That's, as Geeta mentioned, we have hundreds of reports. We are looking at publishing this across the board, both to the agencies and both to the local partners. But eventually we come and looking at, okay, what's the right data source? Data is always mismatching. So for me, if you have the right strategic intent, the right data governances, the right data discipline, it can definitely be achieved. But I think you always have integration issues and strategic buy-in issues. But those are the ones that you need to focus on first. If we even get there, that's something which is, I think, is a moving landscape.
All right. My interpretation based on what we heard from the panelists is there may not be a single source of truth for data, but there's probably a single source of truth when it comes to having common definition of success. Probably that's what is going to lead the right usage of data, right? Shifting gears to the next question, right? This is a tricky one, right? Balancing legacy and innovation. GCCs all said and done often inherit what is in the enterprise. So is it feasible to balance these conflicting demands? On one hand, aspirational to create something new versus balance the old one. Geeta, again, maybe in your context, I know you're handling multiple, systems, not just in one, right? Publicis is almost like different organizations together. How do you face this?
So this is a reality of our world, right? It's never going to be an ideal situation, though I feel the GCCs are now in the driving seat, wherein we are trying to standardize, which means also having the IT landscape which is standardized across, but it takes a while to get it to that stage. For example, even in resources today or Publicis, we are actually rolling out SAP across regions, but it cannot be done in one day. So some parts has SAP at a version that is required, others are working on a different version altogether, and we have to train our teams to actually access these systems and work on the data. But what we've also tried to do is having a common source Power BI, which can actually help us create these reports from the legacy systems as well, pulling out the data, integrating, and we have a lot of good tools and solutions available. Somebody talked about AI, machine learning, RPA. This is what it is meant for. Though definitely a caution is about the legacy data set, which is required from overall statutory audit requirements or your GST tax requirement if it's India. So those are things which you have to really plan very well and be aware of the implications and complications in such scenarios. But I think it's very much a part and parcel of the GCC setup today, that there is going to be legacy data, there is going to be something which is in the new system. So how do you really put this all together to make some meaningful data out of it as well?
Koushik, I mean, from shop floor to, supporting an agri-based organizations, you've seen wide spectrum of technologies. How do you see GCCs balancing these aspirations?
I think this is a very good question, and I'd like to narrate a small anecdote here on the choice that you have to make when it comes to data between legacy and new age tools. So on one side, of course, you have all the new age technology and tools. You've got the cutting edge servers now. You've got the cutting edge data warehouses and so on, right? You've got cloud capabilities and so on. But you also have a lot of robust legacy tools that can do the job for you. And I'm going to give you the example of one of the companies I worked for, that was IKEA. Now, IKEA had, as you all know, IKEA is the Swedish furniture retailer. And IKEA had a very, very successful business model where they are, of course, selling furniture both in their stores as well as online. And they had all legacy tools. Their applications on the retail side, on the supply chain side, on order fulfillment, finance, everything was, many of the tools were legacy. They were built in-house. In most cases, the people who had built these tools were no longer even alive. But these were very robust sort of tools, and they were running on databases that were really, really old. But their performance was on point. Yeah? I mean, you had situations where the data synchronization between the online platform and their back-end supply chain softwares were so strong that they never had stockout situations, right? And then you had a bunch of people who came in and said, yeah, but this is too old, we've got to modernize it, we've got to take it all out. So they came in with a plan to implement S4, SAP, IBP 360, and 3 years of struggle followed, where millions of dollars were spent, and it completely ruined the on-time performance with nothing to show for. So this is a cautionary tale where we really have to be careful in our assessment. What are the tools that are today doing the job for us? What is the data consistency? What is the data hygiene? How is the data stewardship maintained today? And to serve the customer in this day and age as well. If yes, then you probably don't want to break it all. But yes, there are tools out there which are past their due date, where the data is probably not consistent, it is not compatible with your other systems, with your core systems, so you got to make the change. But what I would like to say is, organizations have to do a really thorough assessment to look at their infrastructure, to look at their business model, and check what's broken and what needs fixing.
Got it. Vijay.
Definitely challenging, no doubt about it, Bharat, and I think it's something that we all struggle with, but it's feasible with a dual mode strategy. I think obviously, with your legacy system, it's all about maintaining stability. It's definitely like the old Chetak, my dad wants to keep it, he can't drive, but he wants to keep it at home. So I'm sure every key client partner or key agency partner or someone definitely wants to keep the data because, you definitely don't want to, have problems while you're modernizing the organization. And my experiences both in my prior company, Twilio, where we've moved from Ariba Coupa to Oracle Cloud, and we've also currently working with as basic as Microsoft List, which is a kind of a free tool. We are moving to Adobe Workfront. We definitely know that we can't get away with that, but the point is to ensure that we are able to keep that stability and maintain that stability while we are modernizing. And of course, you can always bring in tools like AI and RPA to bridge the gap. But the point of ensuring that you're able to keep that as far as from a data standpoint, while you definitely want to move away to something far better and sustainable as you scale up as a business, even looking to bring in smart sheets and all of that, I think it's important to have that dual approach.
Correct. Often we hear this question that, hey, when is it right to move or modernize, especially, with solutions like RPAs or even other point solutions coming in. There's often that urge to, hey, maybe, why break a system or why chase a particular outcome. Again, Geeta, what's your take on using, or going for an overhaul versus having certain point solutions or other tools? Yeah.
So I feel, it is a necessity that is going to be required going forward. We can't really carry on with legacy systems, though they are strong. It always also has a challenge where you don't have the right expertise or skill set to carry on with that. We have a lot of breaks in processes from a data movement as well. And if you see the new age technologies, work tools, they have integrated AI as well, right? Which you may not have part of legacy. So in terms of the reports that are available, the kind of processes that can be run on these new age solutions definitely is something which all the GCCs have to be on, right? That's going to be the way forward. But also depends, again, what is the business requirement? And if your legacy system is working well for you currently, and you really don't want to move to it, that's also a fine decision to make. But what is the future growth, scalability? For example, Publicis as a team or a company, we have 3 different companies within the entity. We have a media company, we have a Sapient, which is IT, we have digital marketing space as well. Now, all these 3 using different kind of setups and systems does not really help us to consolidate at the group level. Financials, budgets, everything, right? It's a struggle when you have so many multiple entities. We have almost 13 entities in India itself. So imagine what will happen at the back end in resources if I have to work on so many multiple processes which are different, systems which are different, and the data which is broken as well. So definitely for a company like ours, at the scale that we are, we will need to move on to a single platform which will be helpful for all these agencies or companies to really have a standard process which can be finally impactful to the way we do business today and scale it up as well. We're growing every year by almost 6 to 8% from a media perspective, which is a very high growth, and which means we are adding more companies. We are also taking over more companies. How do we really manage this if we have different sets of systems being there, right? So for a company like us, definitely it makes sense, but it will be, again, depending on where you are as an organization, what your business requirement and your future growth looks like.
The conversation is naturally shifting towards value, right? So it sort of brings us to the next theme. What's beyond cost savings and what are going to be the enablers, right? And if I were to ask a provocative question to start with, right, Vijay, maybe we start with you. What are some of the boldest things that you've seen GCCs make?
Before we start, Bharath, I think I will have to leave. Thank you everyone for having me here, and thank you for this panel discussion. Lovely panelists, so thank you for the discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you.
Yeah, just continuing, right? So Vijay, just curious, right? What are some of the boldest moves that you've seen GCCs do to break that perception or even get just stuck at cost arbitrage?
Yeah, I think we've always spoken, and it keeps coming up in every discussion, right? How do you become a value creator moving away from cost arbitrage? I think one thing that we've been actually emphasizing on is diversifying services, really for high value niche, like data services, transformations. So that definitely, I think, brings in the real value that you're not just a back office or you're just a support function. You're moving away to really drive the business and spearhead to something more in terms of getting better business. Second part is, of course, proactively aligning with your headquarters in terms of strategies. How can you really, become the driver of, what the business as a whole, as an enterprise wants to achieve? I think all of that is definitely coming up. For us right now, we are obviously working on PEX labs, the Process Excellence Labs, and also coming up with the Transformation Center of Excellence. I think all of that is really the key focus areas for my CEO or my global CFO. We want to see, okay, what's the real value beyond what you can deliver? And it's not just about, moving the needle, but becoming a game changer.
And where do you think the biggest gap is for most GCCs, right, as they start on this journey towards value, especially with data?
Upskilling for sure, because obviously you run with employees and that's your oil. You obviously need to understand, how are they able to look at this as an opportunity for them to upskill themselves, and also as an organization come together to achieve something bigger. And I think it's more about looking at the value proposition. Of course, you invest in the career as you want to invest in your job, but it's definitely trying to understand what are the areas, like for example, we had robotics coming in through a consultant. We had techno-functional skill sets with folks coming in from core finance and core HR. We were able to convert them to those techno-functional skill sets where they got RPA certified. And we were able to have a good blend of the institutional knowledge and the system knowledge they brought in with the low-key drag and drop features to start with, not the high-value complex coding. But these are new skill sets that we are looking to evolve and develop. For someone who comes in with that mindset that I don't even know what this is, and then when they move out of the company, they're moving into a different skill set, I think it's a game changer. They'll come back and said, oh wow, it just changed my career and it's made me something far better than what I was looking to or aspiring to. I think all of that is to start with, which you can work as incremental steps to augment on that.
Got it. And I'm going to build on this, right? I mean, very good points, Vijay, on need for technical expertise. Where do you invest in terms of business context, Koushik? What's your take on getting closer to business and how that's going to help further drive value?
Yeah, I think in order to be able to deliver value, you have to be really, really close to the business. In fact, you have to meet them at the point of their need. You have to meet them at the point of their problem. And I'll give you two examples from the companies that I work or I've worked with. So the first example is from Mondelez or Cadbury's. And they did an incredible thing when it came to data and analytics. And the function that did it or spearheaded that was actually HR. So, so this is how it was, right? I mean, HR is present in all the countries and HR operations are running, payroll operations are running all over the world. But they really created a wonderful blueprint and they harnessed the right technology, the right tools to bring all the data centrally, to integrate the data, to drive insights out of that and shape it to do their entire workforce planning, talent management, get insights out of employee engagement, retention strategies and so on, where they were able to really get insights like, what is the pay point at which people are most happy? What is the main reason for, employee separation? And what markets suffer the most? And what time period do employees generally move out? At what job grades, at what job levels and so on? And they brought all this data together, they brought it to life, and then they started to design policies around it. That at which pay points or which grades do we need what sort of retention strategy? What sort of change needs to happen in the job profile at a particular location? And this went a long way in helping cut down retention, improving employee satisfaction, setting right the compensation budget and the entire talent planning, right? For me, this was incredible to see, right? The second example is what I see in Bunge. And so Bunge is a company which is into agricultural produce and trading and manufacturing. So they deal in crops, food grains as well as oil seeds, and they have a lot of facilities, what you call factories, all over the world. And at any given point in time, their pipeline is about $1 billion of investment in either brownfield or greenfield projects, facilities. And perennially there used to be a problem where the cost of these investments used to overrun by a margin, by a big margin, or these projects would not be commissioned on time. And all of this, of course, had a tangible business impact, right? So what they did is they first set up one common team, which is actually based in the GCC, which is called Global Engineering Projects. And this is the team who's essentially now centrally doing the entire planning on how to go about making expansion, whether it's a greenfield or a brownfield. They are the ones who are doing the entire pre-project design and engineering. They are the ones who are doing the costing, estimation, etc. And in order for them to be able to do their work well, they have again built absolutely fantastic fit-for-purpose data warehouse, built the right integration tools, brought in the right level of data through catalogs, through bill of materials, through designs, etc. And now, when you see the output, this team is able to deliver engineering solutions, or they are able to deliver blueprints for all their expansions, and they are able to give us a saving of about 7 to 8% on the capital investment. And for the last 1 year, this team has enabled all go lives to happen on time and for production to happen on time in these facilities. So this is an incredible example of how you have a GCC meeting the business at its point of need, bringing in the data, bringing in the capability, and then delivering something for the business which is delivering tangible value.
Yeah, I mean, just building on what we heard in one of the previous panels, right, Sriram's panel, what better than proving value than showing the actual numbers, right? 7-8% does matter a lot. Sort of brings us to the last theme that we have today for discussion, right? We also hear data as the currency for future. What's really stopping GCCs? And maybe I want to specifically pick up talent as a theme. And Koushik, maybe we start with you. Where do you really see the skilling gap happening? What's really stopping GCCs from being able to harness the data really well?
That's a really good question, and I'd say thanks for making sure that's a part of the question set. I think the problem is on both sides, Bharath, to be honest. So the problem is with the skills that are available in the GCCs today, where there is a lack of business intimacy. We have a lot of people who are great at customer service, or they come in with this solution mindset or service mindset, but they are all probably ingrown, or they come from other GCCs or from the BPO industry. And I think you made this really good point when we were having a discussion where they continue to say stakeholders, right? There itself, you create a barrier between you and the other business functions, right? You need people with business intimacy. You need people who understand the ins and outs of the business that they are supporting. And this happens in an incredible way in IKEA, where every employee once a year has to spend a week working in the store so that he understands what it means to serve the customer, what it means to go through the store operations, right? So you really need people who understand the nuance of the business or the problems of the business. Otherwise, it's a lot like I have a hammer and I'm looking for a nail. That's the sort of a problem you end up with. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think people are all getting a little bit lost in this mountain of data, right? I'll give a really sharp example here. It's a very old example. It's about this person called Oskar Schindler, who was an industrialist in Nazi Germany. And when the Holocaust is happening and you have thousands and thousands of Jews being deported and being, sent to the concentration camps, Oskar Schindler comes across a list of about 1,000 people who potentially could be shipped off. And he takes this list of 1,000 and then he goes out and does his bit to save them. And that is enough. Yeah? And that was enough for him to really be recognized in the world. There's now a movie made about him which earned an Oscar, etc., etc. But what I'm trying to say is, sometimes all you need is a small list to get you started to cause real business impact. But we see a lot of people get drowned in data and not being able to act on it. And data is moving very fast. The velocity of data now is so much that if you don't act, there will be somebody else who will act on it, like a competitor or other functions. So a big problem is people also getting caught up in this volume of data and sort of getting paralyzed by the entire enormity of it. So that's the second one. Now I'll go to the other side. You have all the technology, you have all the best visualization tools, you are able to get the golden data which gives you the source of truth. You take this to your colleagues in the business, and then you show them this data, and then you of course want action or a decision. And how many times do you see that data or that analysis is sort of junk or it is dismissed? And that happens because your colleagues also suffer from a cognitive bias, a confirmation bias, a recency bias. So while you can have the best of data tools, while you can have the best of data aids, I think there is a need to sensitize organizations around data psychology, how to accept data and start taking decisions. So that would be my take.
Correct. Vijay.
I'm sure organizations increasingly trust us, as GCCs to manage data because of the level of transformations we do and we have done. And there's always the first part where they come to us, in terms of value. But I always seen there's a perceived gap in terms of, whether there is a gap in your capability or security. In terms of data, as we spoke about it, so if I have a report which goes out, I have a person who's a data warehouse person who kind of houses the data, then there's a data modeler who's building the data dashboard, and there's a person who has the visualizations to it, and then I have a person who plugs in the data to make sure it's fine, and then I finally have a person who talks about the data in the boardroom. I think as we get more, doing more with less, they want it to be one or two people doing all of it. You can't have so much of gaps, and you obviously have the expertise in, but they obviously want the person talking to the data also understand the back end of it and the front of it. I think those are the gaps that we obviously have to work on. To an extent, it's a perceived gap also, but I think that's something we have to work on. The security part in terms of ISO 27000 compliance, the data, compliance issues and InfoSec. Always I have someone, from the InfoSec team calling me and making sure my data is fine, my agency and my client data is secure. It's not really a challenge in terms of compliance. So all of that is definitely a focus area as we get more and more with the data we manage. And it's extremely important to be mindful of that. So all of that perceived gaps have to be addressed if we can become more trustworthy and become more custodians of data.
Correct. And again, data is a vast topic. There is only so much we can cover as formal themes, right? But here is where, as a moderator, I get to put the panelists on spot. So, not sure if you know, but we've got a series of rapid-fire questions for you. We need quick responses. Audience are keeping a watch. So, yeah, this is your first question. Maybe we start with you, Koushik. What should be the biggest priority from our data management? Cleansing existing data, integrating data sources, real-time analytics, building a data-driven culture. What do you think should be the priority?
I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's the last one. Building a data-driven culture. It all starts with that.
Vijay?
For us, it's real-time analytics. Everyone wants to see it at that moment. They can't even wait for the 3-hour data refresh.
Okay. Next one, right? What is the biggest challenge in achieving single source of truth? I know we declared it may not exist, but still, let's assume for a minute. Legacy systems, data silos, governance challenges, of course, resistance to change.
I would say lack of governance.
Governance.
Lack of governance.
Okay, we've got one where, same responses. How about challenge with respect to legacy systems? Cost of modernization, risk of disruption, lack of expertise, again, resistance to change.
I would say the risk of disruption.
Okay.
Resistance to change.
Resistance to change. Okay. How do you balance legacy and modernity? Right. Gradual integration, just rip and replace it. Hybrid coexistence, or guess what? Hey, let's just stick with legacy and see how it goes.
After having spoken so passionately about the example with IKEA, it's the last one. Stick with legacy, it works.
Hybrid coexistence to start with and then move on.
Coexistence. Okay. What is the one role, right? What should be the primary role in a GCC when it comes to data management strategy? Is it to be data custodians? Is it to be partners in driving innovation, operational support for processing, reporting, or end-to-end in the entire life cycle? What should be the one role?
This is tricky. My answer would be either 1 or 4. They are very, very close together.
You can only choose one. So,
You really do put us on the spot, yeah? Okay, I'll go for 1.
one. Vijay?
Strategic partners for sure,
Partners for sure.
as a GCC.
What is the one skill? Is it data analytics and storytelling, advanced AI automation expertise, stakeholder management, or agile design thinking?
Data analytics and storytelling.
I go with that same.
Storytelling.
Storytelling is extremely important.
Okay, got one bonus, right? What are some of the risks to watch out for as you look at this whole data management journey? Data security breaches, Vijay, I know you spoke about security. Misaligned strategies, lack of skilled talent, or overlays on legacy. What is the biggest risk?
I think it's the second. Misaligned data strategies with HQ goals.
For me, it's data security and breaches.
Okay, I mean those were a few questions. We thought we'll spice it up a bit with some questions to add to the points. We're almost at the end of the discussion. We heard from the panelists talk about what does it mean when it comes to value, the need for skill sets. I love the line saying you have a hammer, don't go chasing for a nail, or don't try to fix things that aren't broken yet. What is one thing that you would like to leave the audience with today, Vijay?
One thing I would like to leave the audience with is when we speak about data, it's very easy to get kind of overawed by the technology, the tools, all the bits and bytes. But the data story is one where you have to place people at the center. The human has still not lost its relevance in this entire data story. It is the human who still makes sense of the story. It is one human who influences another human. No matter what the data is, no matter how rich it is, no matter how compelling it is, it's the human who does the influencing. So whenever you're designing a data strategy, whenever you're designing your data plan or your data initiatives, keep this always in the center of your mind, that it's about people, yeah? And then you see that it's a very different way of approaching the entire data story.
Vijay?
I think it's the problem itself, right? Solving the data puzzle is a problem. The opportunity to me, obviously, is how can you turn it into a competitive advantage? So more than just the technology, I think it's a unified vision where you require strategic buy-in, you require empowered teams, and a culture of trust. So you can really make it a data lever to really support your entire enterprise. So to me, it's a combination of all of it put together.
Got it. Thanks everyone. Big thanks to the panelists for putting up with me and being on the spot. But I thought we had a good set of provocations to think about data and what next. Once again, thank you for SSF to have us and have this interesting theme.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bharath.
Calling Shankar Iyer, Director VBO, Johnson Controls, to please come up to give a memento to Koushik Krishnan. So we have Rakesh Sinha coming up to give away that memento to Koushik. Calling Vishal Batla.
Thank you, sir.
Vishal Batla, Client Director, Everest Group, requesting you to come up here, please. Yeah. To give a memento to Vijay Samuel.
Thanks, Vishal. Thank you so much. Thank you.
and Sanjay Gupta, Chief Architect, SSF Global. If you're here, Sanjay. To give away Bharath's memento to him. Thank you. We can have a group photograph.
Thank you.